Hey everybody, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. So I've been a busy handyman and I have been working on my wood floor situation. So I'm on the stair steps right now, and right here is where it switches from one to the next. So I decided I was just gonna go a clear coat and stick with that orangey amber color because it's the natural color of the wood. If I tried to like whitewash it or gray it down at all to something more modern, it's not going to match any of the woodwork in the house, and I'm not up for stripping everything. Doing the floors, like I said, was super labor intensive. These stairs were very slow going because there's this wood trim up on the side, so I had to do the riser, which is the back part. I had to do the step, do the bullnose edge, and go along here step by step by step. Working on the wood floors themselves was a lot of work, but definitely the reward is worth it. So I can still see just a slight bit of either years of wear or the adhesive. So I'm going to hit that real lightly with a sander. I'm not going for a new wood floor look. I am going for it to stay looking like a 1800s floor. So you can see here, that's where it overlapped. This wood stain I'm using is no sand in between coats if you do it within 12 hours. If you do it over 12 hours, you've got to do just a quick sand over coat. Otherwise, the layers do not bond to each other. As you can see, I have gone through and added my first layer. Now it's been enough time, I can go ahead and do my recoat. But this, temperature-wise, we're supposed to get up in the 70s today. No heat running up here last night. It was supposed to dry in 3 to 4 hours. It was not dry, and it was at the end of the day. So I'm going to do the sand coat over it to make sure that I have that good bond. But it's looking really, really good. I'm liking the way it's gonna look. And this whole area is gonna look so nice with like the old wood furniture. The trim's all gonna get recoated white at the bottom when we're done here. So I'm gonna start in on that, but I wanted to show you how great things cleaned up. Now, for the most part, I did not sand. There were areas where some white paint was not coming up and some areas that really concerned me. You can see here where it's a little bit lighter. On camera, it shows up a lot more than it does to the naked eye. So I'm not super concerned about that. Things like the floor patch. This is directly above the kitchen wall, and they actually opened up the floor to be able to pull electric up through the wall from here. So I just made sure and reset the nails so that nobody ever catches a foot on them. But obviously I'm gonna put just a small space rug in here, not as big a rug as what they had. But like initially, you know, there was that real dark along the edges. It's doing really good. So one coat by hand with a natural bristle brush, and it's done really well. But you can see just a slight difference in the sheen. This is satin finish. In some areas where it's a little smoother, but like this board is a lot smoother board than say this one. There's definitely a difference in the layers of the boards, and I noticed that when I was scraping them. Some of them were nice and smooth and some were really chippy. So like on this board, I just made sure and put a good amount of the poly over that, and then there's no longer a rough surface. So it's coming along, it's coming along. So when I said I'm going to sand the floor, I don't mean all out hands and knees or renting a sander to do it or using a power sander. I have a pole sander, and this is for doing drywall. It's basically like a Swiffer with a swivel top. 220 grit is all it requires, and I just go over it really lightly, not super aggressively, and I changed the sandpaper a couple of times. This sandpaper comes in a big sheet like this. They make sandpaper, but it's more like a screen type sandpaper. And then you just fold it in half the lengthwise to fit onto this. There's just a clamp at the top in the bottom, and it's just enough. So I don't even worry about the exact fit there, because I end up pushing it up on the side as I'm going along the edges of the floorboards, basically around the quarter round. And this is the polyurethane that I'm using. Now, because I ended up being late last night, I didn't do my second coat. It said 3 to 4 hours, but I had the windows open for ventilation, and it wasn't really thoroughly dry. At that point, I didn't want to walk on it. In hindsight, I would have started earlier in the day so that I didn't have to do the sanding. This was like $65. You pay a little more money to have that ability to not have to sand. But because I want to have the whole house uniform and match, you know, and that was another thing too. I knew I wasn't going to have enough on hand. I had only picked up 1 gallon, underestimating how much I would need. The floors were really porous and soaked it up. So this is what it looks like scuff sanded before I've shop vacked it. And like I said, I used this sanding pad. First I go over the whole thing like this. A lot of these boards are slightly cupped, so you don't get the middle of the board doing that. So I used it going back and forth this way to make sure that I get that center of all the boards. If you don't get a little bit of a scuff coat, it's not going to stick right there. Every little bit is going to help. It helps it bond to the rest of it. So think of it that way. It's just a little bit of prep work to go along. So you'll need a shop vac for dust purposes. A, you know, kind of a broom vac sort of thing may work, or a microfiber pad. Normally in woodworking, you would use what's called a tack cloth. It's slightly sticky, waxy type cheesecloth, and it picks up all the dust. That would be fine too, but to this size of a room, you know, that'd be spending some unnecessary money. So I'm just hitting it with this attachment on my shop vac, and we'll clean up all the dust. So I want to show, getting down to the nitty gritty here, how I'm doing this. Again, natural bristle brush, spend the money. Don't use a nylon brush. I think it really makes a big difference with woodworking and workability of the product. And this is brush cleanup with mineral spirits, paint thinner, real easy. So you can see I'm just doing nice long strokes to get as much product out of the brush as I can. And, you know, don't drip all over the floor because you don't want a big mess ahead of you. If I were to leave that spot right there and not come back for a while, you would see it later on. So I've already gone around this part here and went to the edge. You want to be keeping a wet edge going into it. So I stop at a board and then just go across the entire room. So this is what it looks like after the shop vacuuming. So with my loaded brush, I start pretty much where I left off and then unload the brush both sides. And then I just do several more passes to work it in. This way it's really going down into the wood grain and not just sitting on top. Some people will use a applicator pad, and this is where it makes a difference because it's actually working down in instead of sitting on top, especially with a board like this where it's a little more like cupped or curved. So the edges are high. This is an 1800s house. They, in real estate market, like early 1900s, or else they just put 1800s. I forget what it is, but old, not perfect floors. And this is a great finish for this instead of trying to do a strip and sand, making it all perfect, because it's not perfect. It wasn't perfect probably even when it was brand new. And trying to fake that isn't gonna work. Okay, one more board to do here. And when I am trying to not overlap, you see I turn my brush the other way for my unloading. Just so I can kind of keep it on the edge. Now, if you come back later on and you don't have a wet edge, it's a little more noticeable, which it's really hard to do when you're going from one room to a hallway to the next, so you could tape your edge. Again, I'm just doing it good enough for who it's for, but I could see where my wet edge and my dry edge right there. You can see it from here, even after the sanding, from leaving off in this room and then starting in the next room. So I know with a lot of contracting, DIY, and renovation jobs, there may be a budget on the table to discuss. Well, I have no budget, but we are thrifty and we are frugal, and that's why I'm doing this job myself. So, as I said when I started stripping the floor, I used the Zep floor stripper. It's a commercial industrial stripper for removing like wax buildup and things like that from commercial type flooring. This is off-label use. It is like $11.68 or $98 a jug at Menards. We do a lot of shopping there, and then you get another 11% off a lot of times. 2-gallon jugs of that full strength. Of course, a couple sponges and buckets, you know, things like that that we already had on hand. I'm not factoring that in. A little bit of sandpaper for areas that were stubborn. Again, items I had on hand. So you figure if I round up, that's about $26 just in the chemical remover. This is $65 a gallon. Like I said, a little higher price for the convenience of not having to sand if you do it on schedule or on time. I have a family, I have kids, things don't always work out that way. And today's job, I started this around noon today, and my husband's got other projects going on, and everybody in the family keeps pulling me away. Well, I'm trying to show you what I'm doing and get this done and be able to close the windows before nighttime because the temperature is dropping. Hours into this, we are I'd say 8 to 10 or 12 hours. Hands and knees. Like I said, ventilate. If you can have windows open, fans running, it's always beneficial, you know, with the chemical stripper. This polyurethane isn't that bad. But the whole house was very strong smelling this morning from having the windows shut during the night. So, $65 twice. The 23, add that up. I would guess if I were to buy buckets and sponges, maybe $150 for this main floor or the upper level of this house. That's not bad. To buy just paint to paint over the floors, I know a lot of people are doing that, we'd be over that because a 5-gallon bucket of paint, several coats over, painting supplies, it starts getting to be too much money. Like bare porch and floor paint has really gone up. It's a good quality floor paint. I hate to see old floors in a house like this painted when, you know, you're not trying to make it look like a brand new floor. So I think we're doing all right here for about 150 bucks. I'll plug in some exact numbers at the end. Okay, so this room is about finished. I Left myself one board to be able to stand on to turn my light off, and realized I had better show you before I turn the light off. This is my final coat here. You could do a third, 2 is enough for me. Here is the end of room number 2. The larger room took about 45 minutes with breaks. You know, taking care of the kids and the family, like I said. And this room is probably 25 minutes. So I've already gone through the room, painted my baseboard. I've been bringing in furniture and setting it back up. But it's been a good result. So much so that I'm starting in on the lower level to do the same thing. Just look how nice it all turned out. Everything's uniform and nice. I just really like it. So if you like these kind of videos, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and you can see how the rest of the house ends up turning out at the end. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.